So now we have our frame kind of suspended in a contraption so that I can kind of show how I'm going to net this against a decent backdrop so it's not confusing. It's very similar to the simple rustic one I did before. The netting process is the same. I'm just going to do it slightly different because well, there's only going to be one variation, I should say. Is I'm going to, again, I want to take my cordage, and this time I've made my cordage about my arm span length, and then 1/2, so an arm, right? So both arms and then one arm. Both arms across my chest and then one arm from fingertip to armpit. So it's a little longer, so it'll be a little larger net. Now we're going to do, and I was misspoke in the last video, is what we're going to do is what's called a bail sling. And basically you're going to put a bite in your cordage, and you're basically just doing it in halves, right? So you're going to do a bite, and I'm going to start at the front here. All you're going to do is just loop it around and feed it through. And that's your bail sling, if you will. And this will kind of hold all of these pieces together around the frame if you're just going to kind of do this sort of windy sort of frame thing. Now, what I would like to do, or what I'm thinking about doing, is doing an overhand knot to cinch this together at the very tip so it doesn't come undone, to keep all of the loose ends real tight. I'm debating that right now. I guess you could do that, and you can make a knot here so it's really tight and everything is gripped in. But this is wider than the piece that I'd done before, so I think on second thought I'm going to kind of leave it as is, because as we knot the net, it'll start to tighten up a little bit. So, but you could do that, by the way, all right, if you choose to do this style. So at any rate, we'll just use the bail sling here like so, and I'm gonna do, I think, 16 this time, and I'm just gonna go around and try to be equidistant, make these equally distant from one another as best I can. I'm eyeballing it. Those people that like to measure things, you can measure and be real precise if you choose to do so. But the cool thing about bushcrafty stuff is you don't have to be too technical or too precise on a lot of stuff that you do. So it just has to be just enough, or about. As long as it works, that's the end goal, is make sure your stuff works. Okay, so I'm just gonna go around here and I'm gonna do bail sling loops for our cordage here, and just pull it through, and then I'm just gonna cinch it like that, and do that all the way around. Okay, so here's the rustic net we made before. Very quick and dirty, rustic. We just tie it at the end. That's how we're going to end up doing. And this is just really, just twisting some branches around and weaving cordage in and out, knotting cordage in and out to make a net. This rudimentary handle, not even really finished. Okay, so I'm going to step further. This is going to be a much more robust piece. It's a robust frame here. We attached a more robust handle configuration. We could have used it as is and done the same sort of treatment, and we would have been just fine. But I'm just going to go ahead and finish it just because I can, and I will, and I want to. So I'll set this aside. To recap, I have done a bail sling over the main loop or hoop that we've created for our frame, and I've used my arm span width, or length, excuse me, and a half to create our weavers. So basically all you gotta do, to recap, at least the way I like to do it, is we're just gonna overhand knot this. Lots of pretty knots you can do. just overhand knot it. So I throw that over my shoulder just to get the extra strands out of the way, because this jute cordage, and this is store-bought cordage, this is not homespun or anything like that. We'll get to that later, hopefully. However, this is just stuff I bought from the store because it's relatively cheap and it's good to practice on. I want to practice on the cheap stuff versus spending the time and effort of going out and harvesting the caloric output of harvesting and processing and spinning cordage just to practice on. So again, I want to make my knots relatively the same, equidistance from one another, and I'm just doing overhand knots, real easy, nothing difficult about that. And I'm just going to grab one leg, there's two legs here, and I'm going to grab one leg of each strand, their neighbor basically, and just begin making a row of knots to begin our net. Okay, this is a real simple and easy technique. It's just time consuming. So you put a movie on. I watched when I was making the other one, I was watching a Snow Walker, which is a survival movie about a downed pilot back in the 50s in Alaska, dealing with the Inuit, and he was to transport this native or Inuit girl who was sick, but he didn't have no skills, and of course was very disrespectful and not appreciative of the native people of the region. But he learned some things there too. She helped him survive and get back to where he's supposed to, get back to civilization. So check that movie out, Snow Walker. Right now I'm watching an Australian movie. It's kind of a tearjerker in a way, and it has to do with half castes, meaning basically biracial children of European and Aboriginal descent. And these girls, you know, it was an edict at the turn of the century in Australian government, if I'm understanding the movie correctly, that if you're half caste, they're going to just grab you from your family who's been raising you since birth and teach you to be a domestic servant. Yeah, little angering, little tough to watch, but it's history, I guess. And that's what is it called? Rabbit-proof fence. If you can watch that if you want to. So it's just something you do. You can do this sort of busy work while watching or something, or listening to an audio book. Ron Foster's books, I'm definitely going to pump his books. Those are good audio books for general preparedness, education. They're very likable, they're very understandable, and if you're busy, you can multitask because you can just listen to the storyline, and the narrator is very talented, so it's kind of interesting, but you learn a lot. So I'll put links below. So in many of my videos on this channel, just make sure that you check below for any additional information, any downloads and such like that. And you know, hey, you know, put something in the tip jar if you want more, please, because that just helps me get motivated to do more stuff. You can also make suggestions if you'd like to see something, and I've got a plethora of stuff I'd really like to go there with. I just, you know, I live in the city. I don't have my own acreage or my own yardage or that whole thing, so it's kind of difficult to go out and about, especially in these days, just kind of doing this bushcrafty stuff, because people freak out. Trust me, they freak out. So anyways, do your first row, we'll come back, we'll start the second row, and it's easy sailing from there. Okay, so we've gone around the first ring or first round of knots all the way around, and again, it helps to move around it. It's easier once you do. You can make your net like this, and you can prop it up on something, and you can stand around, and it's easier just to move, which is what I'm having to do off camera here. But I want to show you the technique again here. For the camera, we've got our first row all the way around, about the same distance from the frame to the next knot, and then you just want to eyeball it. You just want to eyeball it. True netting uses a shuttle or a netting needle and a gauge to give you the equidistance of mesh. We're just eyeballing this. This is real quick and dirty rustic style. Okay, so for the next, all you do is, again, you've got 2 legs. You're going to grab one of the legs of each of the neighbors, and you're just going to make a knot. And this is going to be your second tier, your second layer, or level, or round, or whatever you want to call it. And then just make a knot. And then you can go counterclockwise, or you can go clockwise, however you want to go around your project. That's what you choose to do. That's fine. Our concept is you want to try to get these at the same, make a row of these all the way around at the same level. And when you just do an overhand knot, you can push and adjust the knot, so you're not just subjugated to wherever the knot chooses to cinch. This jute cordage is it's real hairy, so it likes to catch, so I have to kind of work with it. Okay, so this is going to be your second row, and I'm just going to go around and do the second row, and then I'm going to do third, fourth, for however long I want my net to be. Now what's going to happen is these pieces of cordage are going to shrink upwards, because you're putting knots in, you're pulling up the length of it. So that's why we want plenty of length for a decent size. I'm probably hoping that I'm going to get something that's, you know, hopefully when this is said and done, I want to get something possibly this long. We'll see. I don't know, but that will be decent size for me, for this size of net. Maybe a little longer. But we're on a second row now. Just go all the way around. Okay, so we've knotted our hand net, our dip net, to the length that we needed. And what we would do at this point, again, is we tie a knot at the end of it. I'm going to show you another way to, in case you have too short of a length to tie a knot successfully, another way just to secure the bottom of your net. So again, this is common whipping. I'm using that concept. So I'm off camera. I'm just going to make a loop like this, or a bite. And I'm making it pretty thick, actually. I could do this with, you know, however many strands, but it'll match, trust me. And then what I want to do, if I can get this on camera, is keep this loop in my hand. This is the loose end right here, and then this is just gonna go, it's just gonna wrap around what I'm whipping it to. So I can just kind of do this around and around. It doesn't have to be completely pretty or whatever, but I can kind of just do this around and around a few times, right? Alright, so once I get it wrapped around a few times, this loop that we made, I want to find the opening. Okay, this is what they call whipping, common whipping in nautical terms, knot making terms. And I want to thread this through, my running in through, like so. Okay. So I basically have this sort of situation. Now this loose end, or this tail, I can now pull through. And what I want to do is I want to kind of pull this just under, just a little bit. Alright, I pulled it under, And then now I can snip. Alright, so I got some scissors here or a cutting tool. Let's cut this about, a quarter of an inch or so. This is extra, again, store-bought cordage. If you made this cordage from scratch or you harvested, yeah, you're going to be reticent about cutting it, trust me. And then I want to try to pull these ends underneath gently. Alright, so now it hides our end here. Then I could either wrap this around some more, this other end that we pulled through, or I can be very discreet and I can pull these fibers here and I can cut, and it's hidden. Okay, and then so basically this makes a round or a common whipping stroke. Now if you want to make sure that this doesn't go anywhere, you can tie some knots in your ends here, overhand knot, so it doesn't slide down, because this could potentially slide off. So you just make a couple of knots, make sure the knots are close to the binding that you just created, and that's all. I mean, no big deal. I mean, real quick and dirty type stuff. Push the knots up. So yeah, this ain't gonna go nowhere after it's all said and done. I'm gonna go to the other side here, the back side, and just do one, and then so it'll be very difficult for this knot to slide off, or common whipping as they would call it. So knot there, and then I can just kind of push that there. So now that ain't going nowhere. That's on there, and we have the finish, a rustic finish to the end of our hand or dip net. Okay, because again, I just created a bail loop and then put a knot in a row, went through second row, third, fourth, fifth row, just tying each neighbor to each other. Real easy, real quick, real simple, not hard to do. And you can leave it loose like this if you want to, or you can be neat like I'm about to be. And I'm just going to kind of cut this right about here. And then if you buy this store-bought cordage, you can fray this and it becomes a good tinder bundle. You can prep this with some tallow or some dryer lint. I have a video for that to make easy fire starters. So you don't have to just throw this away, but you could if you wanted to. But you can still use these ends, and you just fray them, bush them up. These ignite pretty good. This store-bought jute cordage is actually treated with some sort of chemical. It smells very similar to what they treat telephone poles to make the pines that they cut down, because pines go up pretty straight, and the telephone poles they tar them. So what I'm smelling is kind of tar. I don't know. It doesn't say on the package, but there is a smell to it, but it takes a ready light. So just as a side note, you can fray these and kind of break these up, and now you have extra tinder bundle for those situations when you need a fire accelerant. At any rate, here you go. This is our rustic hand dip net. It's big enough, good enough. Again, small, medium-sized bluegill, bass, trout, whatever. They ain't gonna squiggle through too quick because their fins are gonna get hooked up. But again, the more strands that you put on, the tighter the mesh, the more work you have to do. Anyways, that's how that translates. So at any rate, this is how you make a hand dip net real quick and dirty. And yeah, there you go. All right, so finished piece here. I've had to reinforce some things here so you can notice the construction. It's a 3-pronged construction. I had to add a splint here because it started to crack, because the original one, I put something pretty heavy in there just to test the robustness of things, and I corrected it by adding a splint, and then whipped it with the cordage on both sides just for aesthetics. And then this piece here probably could have jutted out further out because it wants to slip, and so I just tied in and created a notch here so it doesn't move out anywhere. So again, this is just bushcrafting, sort of problem solving as one goes, but you know, this was sort of like ad hoc project. It's sort of something I just figured, oh, let me see if I can do this, let me see if I can make it, and then I'm going to show it and archive it. There's a better way to do this, a more efficient way to do it. Hopefully I'll get around to that, but for now, here we go. This is the end product. It works. Oh, I also added a lanyard at the end of it, because that's the one thing you don't want to do is lose your net when you're out fishing in the water, especially if you have a decent size fish on in your basket or your net here. So anyways, there it is.